Good morning and welcome to everyone who's connected to this event via YouTube. I'm truly hopeful that the next event of our club will allow us to meet in person. It's been a long, long road, but I'm confident there is light at the end of this long tunnel. Thank you to all of you who have maintained your membership and connectivity to our very special organization. I know our club will only be stronger having persevered through this pandemic. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Teresa Claassen and I'm the Vice President, and I'm stepping in for Mary Narvel, our President, who is taking a long-deserved break from the podium. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge Mary. She has done an amazing job keeping us all motivated and functioning through this pandemic. She's been relentless and determined to keep the club going during the lockdowns. We have been told by the group at FEWAL that KCWC is the only women's club actively operating throughout the COVID lockdowns. On behalf of all our members, Mary, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for your leadership, incredible work ethic, and guidance in ensuring that KCWC was able to manage through such unprecedented and a difficult period. Ladies, please feel free to reach out to Mary to congratulate her on a job well done. Her email is president@kcwc.org.uk, and it would be nice for her to receive a congratulations from the members that she has worked so hard for over this past year. For our general meeting today, I'm broadcasting to you live from the Royal Geographical Society. If people are not able to join us today, or if you experience technical difficulties throughout the meeting, you can also watch the meeting by logging on to KCWC YouTube channel commencing on May 10, which is Monday, I guess, yeah. I hope after 14 months of not being able to get together in person, you're all well. I look forward to seeing you soon over the next 2 months, and as the UK again begins its planned opening in the country. Before we begin, I have a few announcements to make from our truly amazing activity leaders. A big shout out to them, and thank you to all of you who have kept us going during the multiple lockdowns that we've experienced over these past months. You have given us enjoyable and thought-provoking activities to look forward to as we had nowhere else to go and were not able to socialize with each other. So well done, all of you, and a tremendous thank you. My first announcement is British history. We're doing a series of British history walks on Wednesdays after the May 17th opening. May 19th is the first one, Bloomsbury. This walk will take us through beautiful squares and houses where the Bloomsbury set lived and loved. We will take in the broad sweep, of Bloomsbury's history from the 17th century onwards as great landowners developed the area. We'll also look at the place where T.S. Eliot's wife denounced him in public. And on May 26th walk, we will visit the walls of the City of London, which covers 2,000 years of British history. London's walls were built by the Romans some 1,800 years ago and have defined the city ever since. They still mark, in part, its boundaries, and the ancient gates are still remembered at Aldgate, Moorgate, and Bishopsgate. They provided shelter to Alfred the Great and defended London in the War of the Roses. Tim will take you on a tour seeing all that remains from the tower in the east to Blackfriars in the west. Along the way, we will see Roman ruins, the oldest synagogue, historic churches, medieval alleys, and ancient monasteries. Orwell's Ministry of Truth and Brendan Bahan's favorite watering hole as well. On the 9th of June, we have the Bermondsey Walk, which was once the Kitchen of London. Specializing in food production, it had the largest biscuit factory in the world, as well as Hartley's Jam factory was there. But it was best known for being the center of England's leather industry and the stench which permeated the area. Today, it is reinvented with art galleries, coffee shops, and museums. Tim will take you through this vibrant area, exploring its contrasts and pointing out the messages from the past. And on June 23rd, there is a walk and river cruise to examine the legacy of the Brunels. This is an all-day expedition in the footsteps of the Brunel family, who between them transformed the face of Victorian London. Our guide, Tim Potter, will lead us as we take a boat from the embankment downriver to the Isle of Dogs, the DLR, through the canyon of Canary Wharf, and then overground train under the Thames. That just confuses everyone, to arrive at Rotherhithe. Along the way, we'll see the Brunel's 3 bridges, the launch site of the greatest ship ever built, and the first tunnel ever built under a river. Those of you who wish can descend into the shaft and visit the museum. Next, Women in Wine is Thursday, June the 10th, which is an activity co-listed with Wine and Foodies from 6:30 to 8 p.m. This is a rare opportunity to liaise with 2 wine industry giants, Johnny Ray and Amanda Skinner. They're editors of The Wine Spectator and Private Cellar, respectively. 4 wines, with delivery included, to your home for $78.80. And I think this is a great value and great fun. You'll be drinking for days and supporting women in winemaking. But please be sure to purchase your tickets prior to May 28th in order to ensure time for on-time home delivery of the wine. On June 23rd, we have art history. It's called a Know Before You Go lecture on the Tracy M&N Edward Munch expedition. This lecture is a highly acclaimed exhibition which opened at the Royal Academy and then almost immediately closed due to the lockdown. It's reopening on May 18, and we have managed to persuade Joe Reimer to lecture as we originally had planned back in January. This activity is a live lecture and there's a capacity requirement. So if we do not have enough people sign up very soon, it will be canceled. So grab your friends and be sure to not miss this informative lecture on the exhibition. Classical music and opera have also co-listed with After 6 activity group. This activity will take place on the 22nd of June at 6:30 at one of our members' homes. The drinks reception in the garden will be covered by a marquee starting at 6:30, concert indoors at 7 o'clock, and then nibbles and drinks at 8 p.m. This will be carried out according to government guidelines, and we fix a limit of 30 people. The concert will be performed by Andrew Bernard, a Stradivarius violinist, Maria Marchand, award-winning British pianist, and Lola Ganzaroli, a Russian soprano. Music program of the evening is published on the website. Non-members are welcome. The tickets for a member is £35 and non-member is £40. Next is an activity from Glorious Gardens, which is scheduled for next Wednesday on May the 12th. That's a virtual tour illustrated following the 5-mile walk route linking the 9 ponds of Wimbledon Commons. The members will learn about the history of the Commons, including royal celebrations, ghostly stories, and the exploits of villains. This talk is raising money for a local Merton charity which supplies food and laptops needed for children in poor areas. Lastly, the activity announcement, the book group. They'll be meeting for June the 7th after the general meeting on Thursday. The book everyone is reading is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. Also of note is starting in September, the plans are for everyone to meet face-to-face rather than virtually, so cross your fingers. All of the activities that I've just announced do have people already signed up, but there's still room in each of the activities that I've mentioned. So don't delay. It will be a nice way to catch up with fellow members in person. Please go to the KCWC website to get further details and purchase your tickets. So now it's my pleasure to introduce everyone to Masha Gordon. Masha Gordon is an experienced board executive, an avid alpinist, and a mother of 2. She started her career as a journalist for the Washington Post in Moscow and later studied in the US, gaining an MBA in political science from the University of Wisconsin and a Master's of Arts in Law and Diplomacy from the Fletcher School of Arts at Tufts University. Masha spent the next 16 years of her career working in finance. She spent 12 years at Goldman Sachs, where she was a managing director in the investment management division, and most recently led the emerging markets portfolio management team at the fixed income powerhouse PIMCO. She moved to a portfolio career of non-executive board roles in 2014 and currently serves as the chairwoman of the board of directors of Detsky, Russia's largest retail chain of children's goods, and is an independent director of Alrosa, which is the world's largest diamond company, and the Moscow Stock Exchange and Polyrisk Gold boards. Her portfolio of nonprofit roles includes being a member of the board of advisors for the Fletcher School at Tufts University and a trustee for the Girls' Day School Trust, which is the UK's largest network of private girls-only schools. In October 2015, Masha embarked on a journey to set a woman's world record in the Explorers Grand Slam, an entrance challenge that features climbing the highest peaks on every continent, including Everest and skiing on the North and South Poles. On June 11, 2016, she set a new Guinness record at 7 months and 19 days. She has since climbed Makalu and Lahost, the world's third and fifth highest peaks. Masha is also the founder of Grit and Rock, that administers the pool of expedition grants focused exclusively on women. We will take questions after Masha talks. She can send them in on you can send them in on the chat screen, the chat line at the bottom of the screen, and they will be sent to me, and we can ask Masha. So thank you all. Please welcome the esteemed Masha Garden as she tells us her fantastic story of her business career and athletic career and how the two came together. Masha?
Thank you, Teresa. You're very, very kind. The Financial Times magazine has a Fun Person of the Week column with a staple question. What would your 20-year-old self be most surprised about if they saw you now? If I can have my slides, it would be great. Well, for me, who could not run 5K at that age, it would have been climbing 3 8,000-meter peaks, including Everest, all in my 40s, or as a child of the 1970s, you could see the school gym of my school, after spending 2 decades on Wall Street, returning back to Russia in the era of Cold War 2.0 to engage in back-channel diplomacy. So I'm here to speak with you, albeit virtually, about the importance of embracing change and to praise a virtue of risk-taking. But first, let me take you on a journey a couple of years ago in October of 2017. Picture being in a thin air in a remote corner of Nepal. Picture being on a steep slope and climbing in utter silence. My partner and I are pushing towards the summit of an unclimbed 6,000-meter peak. No human has ever been here before. It's 7 in the morning, it's cold, and we have not eaten much for the past 2 days. The birds have destroyed our food supply. 5 hours into climbing a snow chimney towards the summit, I noticed that my climbing partner, a charismatic rock star of French alpinism, is unwell. Usually cocky and ultra-competent, he is slow and lethargic, having vomited nonstop as we climb at the cruising altitude of the plane. We are alone in Himalayan wilderness. We have no drugs that could help us, and 1,000 feet drop below us. Boy, I have never felt that alone. In fact, just a few years ago, I wouldn't have been seen, dead or alive, at that altitude. My partner's reactions are getting more and more incoherent, and I have to take a decision. I take a decision to turn back. I've never taken anyone off that height before. I take a deep breath, take some weight from his pack, and manage to set up a first upsail station by drilling 2 holes in the ice and knitting through a rope. 6 more rappels, and we will be off this wall. I try to comfort him, and of course myself. A few light hours later, we descend down to the camp where we spent the prior night, a small tent squeezed on an edge of a precipice. I melt more snow, give him something to drink. He's not getting any better. It is too high to stay on. With altitude sickness, you need to descend as fast as you can to get better. I pack our gear and put on a 50-pound pack on my back. As we cross crevasse lines of the glacier, I plead him to hold my rope tight as I negotiate our passage. Because if I were to fall, we're in deep trouble, both literally and figuratively speaking. I feel hunger pains and realize that with all the adrenaline, I've just had a quarter of Snickers bar since early morning. 24 hours later, the ordeal is over. I close my eyes on the board of a helicopter that is taking us back to Kathmandu and think back over the events of the past 2 days. I don't quite know how, but it seems that I have managed to save my partner's life, someone far more experienced than me, a celebrity in the world of alpinism. I can't help but think of role reversals. Life's journey, a full circle, 20 years on, a different me in a very different world. Change is a state of life. We may not want to accept it, but the thing is, it may not be our choice to make. Some we just have to embrace in order to thrive. In 1920s, an average life expectancy for an American was 54, and an average lifespan for S&P 500 company, the time period the company stays in the index, one could say, stays powerful in the corporate world, was 67. Companies outlived humans. Today, it is 76 for a human and only 15 for a company. Agility for dealing with change and openness to innovation are key to remaining relevant and in the game. I came to study to the United States in 1994, in the era of the end of history, when Francis Fukuyama proclaimed the decisive and final victory of Western liberal values. I was a 22-year-old Russian woman with rather eclectic worldviews. Only 5 years earlier, I was a ranking member of the Youth Communist League. I left graduate school in Boston a few years later as an emerging markets investor. Universities have that quality of turning one's world upside down and reorienting in the most improbable ways. At that point, I have received many job offers from the most prestigious and successful firms. One from a company called Enron, another from a company called Lehman Brothers, and another one from Bear Stearns. Well, you guys know, like no one else, the story. Most of these companies no longer exist. Compared to what may have happened to me had I accepted any of these wonderful offers, I had a pretty conventional career start. You can't go terribly wrong, or we now know, with joining Goldman Sachs. Or so it seemed. I happened to join the emerging markets team as a Russia specialist on August 19th, 1998, the day of Russian default. Of course, I have concluded on day one that my career was over. Yet in the years to come, it turned out that starting in a deeply unfashionable part of the business gave me a head start. And by the time the BRICS story came about, I was a full-fledged investor. But you can only be sure of one thing. Good times always come to an end. And 16 years on and 3 emerging market crises later, I found myself waking up in the morning feeling like a fixture from the movie The Groundhog Day. Boy, if I ever have to take again a meeting with Petrobras or Gazprom, some of the state-owned companies that exist in this world, I felt the need for reinvention. Change, how hard can it be? I was 40 years old and I had a stellar resume. But I was also a woman, and I most definitely did not play golf. On my journey of reinvention, I met many people. Some were extremely encouraging. Some were, well, realistic. 2 months into the journey, I met a headhunter, also a woman and a former AMD of Goldman. After my elevator pitch as to why I was ready to join a boardroom, she politely inquired me what was my real age and told me, a mother of 2 young children, 40, there is no way you'd be accepted in a boardroom full of men in their 70s who are passionate about golf. Use your time productively. Have another child. Well, that advice didn't go that well. Not that I didn't want to have a 3rd child or I didn't like my children, but I felt that it was up to me to decide my personal life. In fact, that conversation and advice pushed my competitiveness button. You know, the one, I will prove you wrong. Still, I understood that trying to break into the gold-plated doors of NSC or FTSE-listed companies to secure my first board role was going to be difficult. And I should focus on my unique edge, my understanding of both Russia and the West. And with a degree in international relations and a practice of back-channel diplomacy, I have embarked on the journey of becoming a director representing Western shareholders in Russia. Today, some 6 years later, I chair a company and sit on the board of further 4 large companies in the country. That point of pivoting my career in the mid-30s brought another gift, a gift of time. Winston Churchill said, to be really happy and really safe, one ought to have at least 2 or 3 hobbies, and they must be real. He picked up watercolor painting in his 40s to help him cope with the demands of public life. Well, I did not pick up painting or gardening for that matter. Having grown up terribly non-athletic during that phase of my life, I've developed a passion for something extremely physical, climbing. And I've discovered a particular talent, that for tolerating pain. A joy of waking up in the middle of the night in a crowded hut next to 20 snoring strangers with smelly socks, or indeed on a bivy ledge on the top of the mountain. You can see here I sit on the side of Mont Blanc, looking over Italian site Courmayeur, and I'm about to go up on a route called Inaminata. Despite of all discomfort, I relished the simplicity that this world brought. It couldn't have been any further from conferences in Beijing or stressful market situations. I relaxed on the rock. I felt climbing was like a meditation. I practiced alpinism for fun. I needed it to replenish my batteries and have a clearer judgment. But just like my journey to the boardroom, my journey to the world record started with a pretty awful conversation. Still in my PIMCO days, at a cocktail party, I was introduced to Mr. X, a partner in Goldman Sachs, a tall, Australian, athletically looking man. He asked me what was my goal, because we were introduced as alpinists, and he has climbed Matterhorn, Mont Blanc, and a couple of other European summits. I actually, at that point, didn't have a goal. For me, climbing was fun. But I was standing in front of a man, and I had to have an answer. I stammered and uttered Everest, because that was the first thing that came to my mind. I would say the first and the only. He looked me up and down and said, with a knowing air, well, you better start soon. I didn't know what that comment meant, whether it was a comment on my appearance, whether this was a realistic survey of my prospects, or something else. But that night, when I came back home from the cocktail party, I did a quick internet search, as absurd as it sounds. I looked at the YouTube videos, that was in 2013, 2014, and figured out what were the risks that climbing Everest involved. As a fund manager or risk manager, I looked at the mortality record, which was only 1.9%. Though a friend of mine later said, and which I deemed low, well, if you were offered an elective medical procedure with that mortality rate, would you do it? Clearly, the answer would be no. But here I started parting and parceling the risks that brought people towards an unfortunate end, and looked at, methodically, at the competencies that one would need to acquire in order not to perish. So you would have to learn to be comfortable in the cold, because dying often involves or is a result of being hypothermic. You would have had to have experience in the thin air, because that's where you know ahead of time, having that experience, whether you're developing edema, as well as obviously you have had to do the endurance. So by the time I left PIMCO and I had more time, I had a plan figured out. I went on my first expedition to climb the highest peak in South America, and to my own surprise, I was the only person to summit within the group. Then I went to Denali, and many more summits on my way to Everest. And then in one reflective moment on a hill, it occurred to me that if I were to climb 3 peaks that I have already climbed and ski to the North and South Pole, I could break a world record. Ooh, that was a giddy thought to a kid that has failed PE at school. So by breaking another social convention, a woman in her 40s and a mother of 2, I embarked on a 7-month-long climbing journey when I climbed and climbed and climbed until I broke 2 Guinness records. Explorer's Grand Slam. It felt like never-ending marathon that started in October of 2015 and finished in June of 2016. Kilimanjaro, Mount Vinson in Antarctica, South Pole, Aconcagua, Carsten's Pyramid in New Guinea, Elbrus, North Pole, Everest, Denali, Mount Kosciuszko. Thinking back, it was extraordinary in its demands, somewhat mad, and also something I was hardly prepared for. Some days, like when skiing to the South Pole, were all about taming your mind and getting in the rhythmic flow of 1 hour on, 10 minutes off, while dragging a 100-pound heavy sled. That for 10 hours in a row. Nothing happens around you, apart from your shadow, and you see one on the left, moving like a giant sun clock to the right. Some days were about survival on the ice, when you walk on the thin ice with polar bear prints in -40, and in your sleep, you pray that the current of the ocean doesn't erase the miles walked that day, a so-called polar treadmill. And then when you arrive close to that elusive point, you look and you look and you look at your GPS for the point 90.00 degrees amongst crushing ice flows. You realize at that point that you are looking just for a piece of ice that happened to flow over that point in the ocean at that particular time. And very anticlimactic moment for a climber. Perhaps much like reaching a pinnacle of success in corporate life. You're there, you thought it would feel different, or you would be jubilant, but actually not. Everest was different. You would think that this would be the hardest point. This is crossing the crevices on the ladders. But real hardships were of different nature. When I had to deal with a climbing partner on Everest who was so anxious about his own ascent that he became not very supportive. There, you just had to get in a tent, cry your eyes out, and convince yourself that tomorrow will be better. Here, the experience of being a mother of 2 and a former associate at Goldman Sachs came in quite handy. The summit moment was a crowded one. Again, very anticlimactic. Here is the Hillary step where I cried from joy. I cried because I realized that that was the Hillary step, and we were just minutes before reaching the summit. Well, my record-breaking journey, that's the summit of Everest, very crowded, as you can tell, and something where I stood on the summit and I only wanted to get down because the statistics, and you couldn't take the risk manager out of my head, the statistic said that 80% of accidents and mortal accidents happen on the way down. The record-breaking journey taught me to believe in an infinite ability of everyone to change, should we put our minds to it. I most certainly had not possessed the finest athletic background, but I had the mental endurance, and all of you have that. And it turns out that that counts for half of the game. That journey taught me a lot. It gave me skills, it gave me passion. And today I climb and I give that passion to my son, his 11-year-old Theo, who has learned from early age that risk could be managed, and that his mother wouldn't be telling him that he shouldn't be doing that at his age. And at the age of 10, he returned back with me to the Everest Base Camp. And having reached the base camp within 4 days, he decided he wanted to retrace back in one day his route to Namche. That's a 40-kilometer journey. And sure enough, after 8 hours, he was walking in to Namche, and I was following 20 minutes behind. So kids at that age could be incredible. And they may not possess mental endurance, but sure enough, they possess physical endurance. Here is my son and myself on the summit of Jungfrau just a few weeks back. So lovely passion to share with your kids. And that journey has also led me down the philanthropic path of defining the pursuit of charitable giving, something without which much of the journey is simply about oneself. Today, my passion revolves around Grit and Rock, a foundation that empowers young women from less privileged backgrounds to harness their resilience through a year-long mountaineering program. In fact, I probably will show you a little piece of a video. These are the girls in the Central Foundation School in Tower Hamlets in London. 95% of them are of Bangladeshi background. They're first-generation British.
Great experience for everyone.
And
it teaches us new things that we can know in later life.
It's a really challenging yet fun experience, and I really enjoy coming.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's just looking down at everyone, and they look kind of small, and it's like, yeah, I feel tall because I'm a short person, like, yeah.
Try the white one to start with.
so this film was shot a couple of years ago, and now these girls are in their final year of school. I remember them coming to the gym the first time, being very shy, being very uncertain, not being able to make an eye contact. And now these girls are looking forward to, one of them is looking forward to joining actually UK military. Another one asked me the other day whether she has a crack of being a CEO, and the third one is about to become a scientist. And this is the most rewarding and wonderful journey I actually have been through. So in conclusion, virtually everything we took for granted in the past few years, and clearly COVID reminded us, is up in the air. And clearly, what should we do? And no one can tell us what the true answer is, but one thing I can tell is that change is possible in every age, and I fully expect myself to reinvent myself a few times in the next couple of decades, because I realized that there is no point of resisting that, and the best journey one can have is by embracing the change, is not by not holding the grudge. If your job no longer exists, well, you can't do very much about that, but what you can do is go on the path of reinvention, figure out what you're passionate about, and then build the competence. So a few takeaways from my own journey is to look inward and not outward, and ask yourself a question: what is really holding you back? Often it's social conventions. I've been told so many times, and I guess I told you a few anecdotes about it not being wise for women in 40s to start athletic adventure, for being a mother and being in Everest Base Camp and climbing to the summit of the highest peak on Earth, knowing the mortality is 1.9%, not being wise, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, it's a personal choice, and that outward limit should not exist. It should be your judgment and your choice. Question accepted wisdom. Focus clearly on intermediary goals, not on the daunting price, because it's difficult to get motivated if you know that the journey is a few miles rather than a few meters. But if you target small wins, small competencies, they will change your perspective on what is doable. And accepting that it's really okay to fail. Good judgment comes from experience from having bad judgment. I can say that today I climb for fun. I don't climb for records. And as a result, I climb alpine style. I climb more difficult technical routes. And the percentage of success, probability of success, is a lot lower in those. So I have accepted in a way that the joy is from having an experience, is from having that trial, and from having that occasional triumph you could have from succeeding. So I will end my talk here, and will be very happy to answer your questions. And here it is over to you, Teresa.
Well, that's quite a story. I can't imagine doing that. Just the cold alone. I think I've gotten a little soft. I'm Canadian born and used to tough winters and snow and everything, but to be out in that sub-zero weather is just itself a challenge.
Yeah, you just learn that you have to layer up, and I guess my only advice—
You have to have good boots.
And good boots, and they don't
Warm.
make polar boots in female sizes.
Oh,
So the smallest size, I think, is something in the order of 39. I should have actually put my a photo I took, because there were no buffing boots. Buffing boots is something you use with 2 pins to go to the North Pole. And my size was 37, so my polar guide had to construct a concoction of very, very old boots where we had some felt insert followed by the plastic bags in order to keep water tightness.
Oh,
so we got around that, but
wow.
this gear actually doesn't, for this adventurous, again, misogynistic approach or assumption, but it doesn't exist for women, so hopefully that would change.
Yeah. Well, did you find many women in your groups that you went climbing with?
You know, it's incredible actually how much the world has changed. So when I was doing my Everest ascent, which was just 5 years ago, I was the only mother in the base camp. And I don't think that that's any longer the case. I was, I think, 400th woman to scale Everest, and in the following 4 years, because we didn't have a year of climbing last year, I think there were another 200 women that came to the summit. So times are changing, and I think women in their 30s and 40s are finding themselves in a position of wanting to do it, having the means to do it, and having, I suppose, a community and role models to do what appeals and what is very gratifying.
Right, yeah. Well, I kind of have a question that I was thinking about. I wrote it out as it relates to the financial services industry that you came from. I used to work in the Canadian banks. I was a foreign exchange trader and money market trader. So working with, maybe there were 10 women in the trading room at the time, because I'm pretty old. And it was about, maybe 300 men. So it was like working in a locker room. So now there's a lot of emphasis from the financial services industries to employ more senior women. So, my question would be, why do you think we haven't, I guess it's better now than it was 30, 40 years ago when I was in it. Do you think that this issue is specific to individual firms, or is it more the demands of the industry itself?
Well, it's a question, I suppose. Let me turn it around. We have only, your statistics, I think we have only 7 female CEOs of FTSE 100. There, the answer would be, it's not for the lack of trying, it's for the problem of a funnel. You need to support, and we didn't do it 20 years ago, you need to support women at the beginning of their career and the mid-career when they're most vulnerable to pressures of parenthood, and promote them, mentor them, make allowances for demands of motherhood in order for them to emerge as competent leaders and accepted leaders, right? Not diversity leaders, down the road. I think that because 20 years ago this wasn't as prominent, today we still have the problem, and very much so the problem with having chairwomen, the helm of the boards of these companies, or indeed board members. I don't think that this would be the case 20 years from now, because today it's no longer accepted not to support women. At that age, if you look at Goldman Sachs, for example, the associate class today, there is almost a quota of 50%. And that's how we will emerge at the top of that funnel in 20 years' time with much broader representation and gender parity. Yeah,
because now, a woman is on that path that wants to go up the ladder in finance. They have to decide whether they're going to have a family, if the husband will stay at home and look after the children, like do role reversal, get a nanny to help. It's just that they have to, seems that I think women are, when they're starting out in their career, they actually have to make a conscious decision about how they're going to manage their professional career along with their personal career, which I don't think men have to do the same.
Again, I would think that the social conventions are changing. So when I got married and we had a pact with my husband that we will try to do it 50-50. Now, was it 50-50? Who knows? But my kids are 11 and 14, and I still have a living nanny. Now, there will be a lot of, I'm sure, from more traditional side of the society, there will be question marks and raised eyebrows. But that's the journey I took, and that what allowed me to, I suppose, to have a more balanced life, and more than anything, to have a career life. So everything is a trade-off.
And now, the rewards are your son is enjoying your other side of your life, your athletic side of your life, and so that's you're having your time with him now.
It's amazing to be able to be a child with your child. To be a parent, but in a very different role of truly sharing the fear and the joy and discomfort and, and creating memories, right? I wish I created those type of memories with my parents.
I know, really. One question I was thinking is, have you ever run into that gentleman that catapulted you into the serious climbing ever again?
No, and I should actually, in fact, write him a thank you note. Often we should thank people who push that button. Or for that reason, for that matter, not that woman headhunter who said, you will never do it. And thank you for pushing me, because I actually made me think and rethink, and it happens. So.
So what do you think has been your most difficult climb that you've done?
Well, I think the most difficult one is the one I described at the beginning of the
first one?
The journey,
the very first
well, this is the story of having to save someone who was effectively guiding me. It was a very, very scary 48 hours because you are there and you think, you literally have 1,000 feet below you. It's very, very cold. There are crevasses around and there is no one in sight. And you have someone who you relied on for their competence effectively being incapacitated. I learned the life lessons as to I will never climb again in those conditions, one of two rather than one of three, because you need to have, in my case, margin of safety. But I also learned that we know often more than we think we do. And as we are thrust in corporate life, that's a great parallel. As we are thrust in the situation of responsibility, we discover by doing, that we are capable of ruling it out. Objectively, in terms of volume of climbing Makalu, the world's 5th largest, highest mountain, was perhaps the most taxing one and one of the most beautiful ones. So I think it depends on factors.
Yeah, okay. Let me see if I have some questions from, when you dig deep into your psyche or soul on the mountain or in life, what do you draw on most to keep motivated? Is it conquering insecurity worse than a mountain peak? And that's from Mary, our president. So when you dig deep into your psyche or soul on the mountain or in life, what do you draw on most to keep you motivated? Is conquering insecurity worse than a mountain peak?
Well, you tap in that feeling that you can't fail, right? And you have to deal with consequences of failure, which in the mountain actually is pretty deadly. So there you just have to try to remain very calm, because the mistakes and the disaster typically happens in a very, very short period of time. It's a series or the end of the series of the events. So the key is to tap in fact, in that Zen, if you wish, and think, gosh, I have to keep moving, otherwise there may be dire consequences. So I think it's that feeling of, I can do it, but it has to be triggered, I suppose, in a very Darwinistic way in the mountains of knowing, gosh, in order to remain safe and come back home, I have to be able to continue thinking.
Oh, you're very strong. I have another one from Claudia Marchetti. She says, which of your failures have been your greatest teachers? Well, I can't say that in one of my jobs. In fact, my last job on Wall Street, I didn't succeed I set out together with PIMCO to build a team, and at the end, because of a variety of reasons, I didn't. And I chose to leave and to reinvent my life, which at the age of 40, when you have career opportunity, and I had a career opportunity of restarting again in the same industry, I think I chose to jump off a cliff into unknown, and change profession, give up substantial income, because I just couldn't see, I described the Groundhog Day, I couldn't see myself waking up one more morning feeling that way. And I think that that has been a great teaching, that fear should be beaten into submission in your mind, because fear of failure in that particular case would have stopped me from development and from that journey of, and journey that was very serendipitous. When I left PIMCO, I didn't quite know what to do, and I sat at that point, I was a member of the board I still am, of the Fletcher School, so I volunteered to come and teach practitioner's course to Boston. The dean enthusiastically agreed. I went back effectively to live in the dorm room for 6 months, commuting back to see my kids in London. And actually being back in Cambridge, Massachusetts, being close to Harvard, taking exec ed courses, delving in the world of impact finance, kind of oriented me on the journey to, where I guess the end of the journey where I am today. So I guess the teaching was to beat that fear into submission. Otherwise, you're going to be feeling constantly sorry for yourself and keep looking to restart a journey that should end, really. Yeah, no, I get that. You get to a point in your career, you talk about how long you live and how long these companies live for. You get to a point where they become you, and you lose yourself. And it's been amazing to listen to your story that you've gotten to know yourself, but in a different way. Mentally before, well, they're both mental, but for different, one's physical and one's your career, I guess.
But believe me, I had many nights when I cried, and including Everest, which has been actually very, very hard.
Yeah.
Because I had a partner he was an athlete, professional athlete. He was telling me how incompetent, whatever I was, right? when you hear that at 6,400 meters, that's not a wonderful thing to hear.
No.
You know, it's the proof is in the pudding that you can overcome the fears, you can overcome lack of skills by doing your 10,000 hours of whatever activity that might be, and you at the end emerge stronger, and you emerge with more competence.
Amazing. I have another one from Claudia. What made you choose alpinism as a physical challenge?
In fact, I'm absolutely serious, I was very unsporty. I skied, but very just recreationally. And then with my daughter, I was 33 when my daughter was born. I just made MD at Goldman, and I dared only to take 1 month of maternity leave, which in the retrospect was highly idiotic, but anyway.
Yeah.
With my son, I was 35, I was more established, and I felt it was post-2008. I felt that if I don't do it, no other woman junior than me or junior to me would do it. So I ended up taking all 6 months maternity, delegating my duties to a wonderful gentleman on my team who I trusted. And we left to go to Chamonix. It was October, my son was born in October, and ended up spending there 6 months. Chamonix because we were, this is a close airport, so the father of my kids could come and see them. And there I was very fortunate to spend a couple of seasons, right? The ski season, ice climbing season, and then rock climbing season. And I tried by accident, right? A friend suggested that I try a ridge climb, and I thought, gosh, no way. And then I tried, and I loved it. I suppose I loved that feeling of being a novice and being completely unsure of myself, and then when you go 5th, 6th, 7th time, you are more confident, you have sturdier feet. And the way it made me feel actually as a child, right? I described, I guess, a little bit the romanticism of waking up in a hut. By that time I had a privilege of traveling for business and staying in 5-star hotels. I can tell you that it's a greater joy to wake up in a refuge with 20 people in a room at 3 in the morning, eat some horrible breakfast, but then get on a glacier, put on a headlamp, put on crampons, and go towards a ridge on the crunchy snow. It's incredible. You feel so awakened and so very alive. So I think it's for that feeling. It wasn't sport. It was the feeling of adventure, and an amazing feeling to feel when you are in your late 30s or early 40s.
And probably very free feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because you working in these office buildings and the long hours that you put in and the intensity and the people you're with, and all of a sudden it just becomes your world, that office.
Sure.
And then to get out of the office and go, oh my God, there's a whole other world out here.
Sure, and again, the other amazing thing is we live in London and we see these high achievers that surround us in a professional world. And we think like, wow, well, this amazing managing director, or this guy who runs the firm, this deal maker. And then you arrive to an alpine capital, which Chamonix is, and where I now have a home. My friends have changed, and you sort of see these guys who may not be very well educated, but they are amazing in their own world. Their drive to climb an unclimbed line is so strong, and their excellence and prowess is like akin to every single great deal maker here. So I think seeing the world through another prism of defining achievement through something physical and non-material has been actually very, very eye-opening for me.
Oh, wow, that's great. One member says, thank you very much. What a very inspiring talk. Another member, do you say goodbye to your family before setting out knowing you may not return? Does that ever go through your head?
Never. I think I did it only once. It wasn't about Everest. I was going on very early on. I was going to climb Eiger, not the North Face, but I think it was the Ridge. And actually, in the retrospect, it's a serious, but not such a serious climb. But Eiger has that aura of not having been conquered until late 1930s. So I wrote a letter to my son and my daughter But obviously now I sort of look at it and smile. No, I have established red lines for my kids because kids need to be able to deal with the parent going on what is viewed socially as a dangerous activity. I told my kids I would never climb Annapurna or K2. The reason being is that mortality rate on those mountains is in the order of 30%. And you probably would never buy a bond that defaults 30% of the time, nor would you go on a climb. And it's not a question of competence or incompetence. The topography of the mountain is such with overhanging ice or with snow that makes it exceptionally dangerous. So you draw red lines and then you just have to obey that and not cross. And then kids can put things in perspective.
Oh, that's good. Okay, my last question. In climbing, many times one pursues a more difficult path or route. How do you transfer this concept to life outside of climbing?
Sure. So, look, I am a board member today. I have been a board member in a variety of companies for the past 5 years. And a year ago, I was having a developmental conversation with my sort of unofficial board member. We'll have I suppose, the board of advisors, right? The friends and or people who have unvested interest in us to give us advice. And he said, well, I think you're ready. I said, ready for what? To chair a company. And of course, at the age of, I was 46. At the age of 46, I thought, well, gosh, it's really out of my zone of comfort. I'm not ready. And he walked me through the competencies that were required. And we talked about what could be a company of the right size and complexity where that could be appropriate. And I suppose I have gotten the journey. It wasn't very comfortable because I had to, again, to shift the social perspective as to why a woman can chair a company in Russia. And I became a first woman to chair a public company in the country. And again, it's an uncomfortable goal because I could have just effectively enjoyed my acquired competence and enjoyed my board roles without taking extra stress.
Right.
But I suppose I felt, why not? This is a developmental opportunity. And okay, if I fail, I fail, but let's try not to make it to fail.
Yeah. You didn't go in with that attitude. Well, that's great. Thank you so much,
Pleasure.
Masha. I'm sorry, I know a lady named Marsha, and
no worries.
I keep thinking. It was an insightful and interesting presentation, and we've all learned a lot. And don't know if I'm going to go climb a mountain, but I could climb my daughter actually enjoys climbing, so I'm definitely.
Well, you will do your equestrian pursuits that you have shared.
Right. I've started horseback riding and jumping. So, anyways. So you're just an amazing, driven professional athlete, and we thank you so much for joining us. We have a small token. We're not allowed to pass things back and forth, but of a bouquet of flowers that we would like you to take home with you.
Very kind. Thank you.
Brighten up your dining room table. So again, it's been amazing to have you. I just would like to make just a couple of little announcements and advise everyone that the June general meeting is on June 3rd. And we have the pleasure of having Deputy Lieutenant John Barber. And we will have updates on the website after the May 19th, as to the size of the person audience permitted here at the RGS, and registration is essential. We need to get more space as well for the post-GM lunch as well, but you do have to sign up in order to attend the June GM. So I'd like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. Stay healthy and stay safe until then. Thank you. Whew.